I'm going to introduce our speaker today. It's Helen Sweetie, so let's give her a hand.
Thank you, Ron. Before I start, I would like to first turn this time over to my friend and assistant to the healer of our Chumash tribe, Enrique.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Enrique. I'm a recently retired teacher. I taught for 35 years, and I taught all the grades. Kindergarten to high school, adults, children who were coming out of incarceration situations, and through the transition program. I also worked with the Chumash tribe for over 20 years in the San Fernando Valley. And as Helen says, I am now a traditional healer in training with Dr. James Adams, professor of pharmacology at USC. He's been here, and some of you may have heard him speak on a walk. In terms of my background, like many people, DNA was a mystery for many people for a long time. And last year, 2 years ago now, we were talking about that one day, so I said, what the heck? So it came back. I am Southwest Indian. I am Aztec Indian. I am black. I am Jewish. Many researchers believe that many of the slaves that were brought by Cortez in 1531 and on were Sephardic Jews. And the wild card for me was I'm like 1/8 Australian Aboriginal. So I don't know how that one, because I keep on studying it. I'd like to begin with a welcome song this morning, the traditional Chumash welcome song. Hey, 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 hum away. Hey, 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 hum away. Hey, 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 hum away. Hey, 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 hum away. Hum away, hum away, hum away. Aho. I'd like now to take this opportunity to bless my friend and your teacher today, because she can use it. As we all can. I begin with white sage. White sage is one of the sacred plants of the Chumash and many other indigenous cultures. This only grows from the Mexican border in San Luis Obispo. However, archaeologists and anthropologists have found this all over the world and all over the United States. How? Because it was traded. It was traded. And they know that. It's been documented many times over. This is a powerful medicine as well. We use it in ceremony, right now. We use it in medicine, to bless the medicine. It contains many monoterpenes that enhance your body. It is the Chumash everyday plant. You must use this every day. I get up, I put a leaf, I grow it in my yard. I put a leaf in my bottle of water every day. Dr. Adams' teacher, who trained him, and he studied with her for 15 years. Dr. Adams is a professor of pharmacology at USC. He's an expert toxicologist, ethnobotanist, botanist, and I could go on. But the important thing that is about this one is that his teacher taught him that before she healed anyone, she would bless them. And before they were ready to be healed, they have to be in a state of mind to be healed. Because if your body and mind are not in balance, that's when you get sick. That's when you get illness. And he's written over 300 publications now, books. And one of the things he talks about, and it's called Living Your Life in Balance, is that if we don't live our life in balance in all ways, it's not working for us. So Helen, come on. Here. I just hope I don't
The
smoke.
smoke alarm's here. Maybe move over to the other side of the room. It's over here.
Dear Creator, we thank you for another day today. We thank you for the gift of Helen. We thank you for all of us being together. Please watch over and guide Helen today and every day of her life. Please bring joy and happiness to her life. Lord, please help her. Your creator, please help her. Heal. Give her surgeon the skill to heal her. If there's anything else harming her body, please remove it now and send it to the ground. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So today I want you to learn what ethnobotany is and why it matters. I also want you to learn what biomimicry is and how some schools are teaching it. So what we're going to start out with is have a buddy. I'm passing out paper, and I want you to write down, as soon as I give you the paper, write down for me what you think ethnobotany is. Thank you, my buddy. Okay, get your buddy and write it down. You have less than 1 minute after I give you your paper. Write it down, and then... Does everybody have paper? Okay, we're good? Okay, time's up. Now
That was Helen's minute.
Now what I want you to do is go to your buddy or whoever's closest to you and share what you know and exchange ideas of what is ethnobotany. And again, you have 30 seconds to do this.
Yeah, it's a taskmaster. Have you ever had Rick? Have you ever seen his?
Yes, we've had him for. He did a chaperone lecture, but this is something different he's doing.
Right, no, I know. I've helped him several times up in Ohio.
Oh, have you? So you know him.
Oh, does it matter? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, he's been a popular speaker.
Oh, at Landon's class, we'll have 40 people show up.
Okay, time's up.
Oh, yeah. You just fire
I need you to raise your hand and tell me what your ideas are what ethnobotany is. Start to this side of the room first. Anybody? Shout out. Medicine. Medicine.
Plants for
Medicine.
medicine.
Okay, what else? Okay. Other ideas?
Just how plant use
Plant use?
or food or any.
Okay.
I think that there are plants that grow in certain areas.
It's what?
Plants that grow in certain areas.
Plants that grow in certain areas. Anybody else? Yes?
So certain ethnic groups use certain plants.
Good. Good
I'm sorry,
points.
louder, what was that?
Certain ethnic groups use certain plants for traditional use.
Certain ethnic groups, I like that. And so it might have to do with the availability of plants. Okay, anybody else, or are we pretty good? Okay.
We use plants in medicine, for food, for clothing, how people use plants, period.
Perfect.
Any possibilities.
And how many of our plants that we get, how many of our medicines when you go to the pharmacy are actually made from plants? Right, a lot of it. And maybe they've I wanted to say evolved, but that isn't the right word. It's changed to be synthetic, so it could be more mass-produced too. Okay, so we have that one down. Ethnobotany is how people use the plants, and biomimicry is about nature-inspired design. Now, I thought today that it was going to rain, and right now it's not, but I still want you to go through guided imagery. Okay, we're not going to close our eyes, though. We're just going to talk this one out. You have a school group has come, and let's call it a homeschool group. You have a variety of ages, okay? And so imagine here you are with 10 kids, and you are going out the center. You've done the inside program, and you're now going outside, and you're going to cross the creek. And I don't know. What we used to do is walk across the steps, the rocks. We didn't even go onto the bridge. And so you've gone across it, and you are with a group who is very hands-on. They want to touch everything. And in fact, let's see, we're not going in March. Let's make this in April. And we've actually seen the sun for about 2 weeks. Okay? And there's plants growing. And they want to touch everything. What are you first going to warn them about?
Poison oak.
Thank you! Poison oak! But not even getting into the plant part. When we start getting warmer weather, what kind of reptile are we going to be a little concerned with? Well, not all snakes, the rattlers. And so they generally come out, they're one of the first to come. And what type of little insect is the other concern here? Yes. And so if kids are going off trail, you might have problems with ticks. And so those are your 3 main concerns. But now you said we have a problem with the poison oak. Do we have any other plants that we might need to be concerned with?
Yucca.
I'm sorry?
Yucca, because it's sharp and people could fall into it.
That's a good idea. It's a yucca. You don't want it to be falling into that.
Well, chaparral, you can scratch yourself up just walking into it. So
That's true. We also don't have in the area, I don't think of where you're going to be taking hikes, but we do have in the park stinging nettle. Has anyone heard of stinging nettle? It has these serrated leaves. You have? And let's say if somebody got into stinging nettle, do you know what you do to solve the problem? You would use solar cane. Okay, solar cane, if you spray that on stinging nettle rash, by the time the effectiveness of solar cane wears off, you'll be feeling better enough. And so that kind of works. But you know what? Before we even get into the variety of plants here, let's imagine we're going back in time. And you are going to be still leading a group on our trail. But this is 500 years ago. And so these kids that's under your tutelage are wanting to learn from a neighboring tribe what you have growing out here. So the same thing would apply. They may know from their other tribes they need to be careful of the poison oak and the ticks, and the poison oak may be unique to here. But we have a couple other things that we need to be careful of, and one was the nettle, and I told you about the solar cane. But they didn't have solar cane 500 years ago. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do if they get into the nettle? I'll tell you what, because you are such a good leader, even 500 years ago. You are going to take this nettle and smush it, okay? And when you look at the nettle, if you reach down and grab it this way, the hairs are going to get into your hand. If you look at that plant and it's growing like this and you go underneath the plant, it's perfectly fine for you to get that nettle harvested because you're now going in the correct direction. And so once you've gotten underneath the plant and you're harvesting it, you can smush it either with your feet, your hands, or whatever. And the sap from that stinging nettle is the cure for getting into the nettle if you're getting a rash. Now, aren't you a good 500-year-ago docent? Let me tell you, this is really great. And then you have other plants that we do have grown locally, but not necessarily in this park. Do you ever notice on the freeway there's this bluish plant that grows and it's very drought tolerant? That's plumbago.
Ugh.
It's horrible, isn't it? But they grow it all over the place because once it's in there, it doesn't take up much water and they think it's really pretty. But it also can create contact dermatitis, for some. And then another plant that we do have growing in the park is ragweed. A lot of people have allergies to it. And if you have allergies to it and you touch the plant when it's producing pollen, you will break out in a rash too. So we don't think about some of these little, and you know what else? Let's say you are wanting to have a bouquet of flowers and roses, and there's baby's breath in there, the little tiny white flowers. When baby's breath is dry, you can also get contact dermatitis from that. So it's not, some people can, but it's only when it's dried out. Okay, so I need to click here. Okay, so bottom?
Bottom.
Okay, so that,
Jesus.
the number one thing when you go on a hike, it's 11 o'clock. They've gone in. And what is the thing that the kids are always saying? Right? You would think that they haven't had anything to eat in weeks. Some of them are really tremendously at getting their point across. Now, we used to, a long time ago, we used to have a whole lot of mustard. And any kind of mustard that we have, for those who went to my class last week, do you remember how to Chianti mustard? That was 4 petals. They all have 4 petals in the flower, 4 sepals, and there's 6 stamen, 4 tall, 2 short. And all our mustards are edible. And what's in the mustard family was mustard, broccoli, cauliflower. There's like 30 different types of plants that's in the mustard family. And so we know that this is edible. And some of them are more palatable than others. But even though it's edible, some people also have allergies. And so if you're going to go for safe, when it came with mustard, the flowers are fine, but the leaves, some people might have allergies to. And so when you're talking about native foods, first of all, we know that everybody's individual. You don't know what their background is. Some people have allergies to peanuts, and they can't have it. And so we don't know what their background is. And so any kind of food that you try is at your own risk. And it's because you know what your own health history is. And so, it's always with that disclaimer too. And so when we know that mustard is a safe family, it's still up to their discretion if, they want to try, the mustard flower. Okay, so that's one of the things that they're going to be saying is, I'm hungry. Can we feed them on trails? No. Nope, we can't. But we did years ago. So then the next thing is, can I eat this? So some of you know that I've experimented around with foods. And so I do have samples. And I'm going to have this passed out. If Cindy can come out and Enrique can help me. I have, we wish. There's the other one. Now, what this happens to be, watch how he does it, and then you're going to do the same thing. What this is...
I'm sorry, Helen, did you bring a knife?
No.
I got it.
Okay. What this happens to be is acorn. Now, do you know how you eat acorn? Once your acorn is harvested, you crack the shell. Did I tell you my spiel on how you... let's start this out again. When my kids were younger, we've been doing acorn for decades. And in the beginning, it was like, okay, how are we going to crack open these shells? So I was using different types of nutcrackers. And that seemed to be really slow going. And so I wanted to make it a little bit faster. After all, look at what year we live in. And so I took a bag of acorns, put it in a pillowcase, put it on my driveway, ran it over with my car a few times because I wanted to be efficient, right? And then from these acorns, I put it in a big 5-gallon bucket, filled it up with water, thinking that it's going to just naturally float and separate. It doesn't. So that didn't work either. So the different things that I wanted to see how efficient we can actually work these acorns. Believe it or not, it was just like what they've been doing for thousands of years. It was having, I had a stone bowl, I have a wooden bowl, and then I have a big flat rock. And we would pound these. We could do maybe 5 or 6 acorns at a time. We would crack them. Once the acorns are cracked, it would go inside some water. I put them inside a cheesecloth bag. I would drain the water out a couple times a day. When I could taste the acorn, and it did not feel, it tasted good. And basically, there's no taste to it when it's tasting good. Then I dried it, and then it was dehydrated, and then it was put in my Blendex, turned into flour. And now that we have the acorn flour, after we've gone through all that work, this happened to be, today's delicacy happens to be acorn flour and chocolate powder and water and nothing else. Okay? In the past, I've done just the acorn, but now we've added something. We're getting sophisticated here. We've joined this year, and now we have chocolate powder added to the acorn. But my point is, if you have the acorn, there's very little flavor to it, and so you can actually make a passable lemon meringue pie out. You can do anything you want with the acorns because it's flat. It has that consistency of the meringue stuff. So enjoy that. The other food that we could try that's actually in season right now.
Did everyone get what one that they wanted?
Helen, that texture of gelatin, is that part of the, is that the acorn?
That is the acorn.
Add something?
It is the acorn. In fact, of our nuts, when you, I went over this last week, but with our nuts, you know, when you look at pecans and walnuts and a bunch of different things, they're actually drupes. The acorns that come from our oak trees are a true nut because when you have the botanical classification, it has a hard shell, it doesn't open up on its own, so that is actually a true nut. And yeah, it's the properties of the acorn meat. And it was also the principal food of our native tribes, too. And why was it so important? It was because the nutritional breakdown is perfect for us. In fact, in times of famine, you can actually get by with just acorn in winter because it provides the fat and the nutrients you need to get through months of famine. Of course, we would not like that. I think anyone would like that because we'd have monotony too. And so with this blandness, you know what else they did? They took seeds and you roasted it. Historically, they were really good with seasoning, and that came from seeds. And you don't hear of that much. You hear of historic use of the acorns or trade items like fish or eating small game, but you don't hear of seeds. And yet they have done studies on that too. There's been papers written up in Northern California of the widespread use of seeds. We used to have, like this year we're having the super bloom. That was all the time, because they didn't have the population density, and so they had this abundant of seeds they could roast and they could use as part of their food, and it would make it so they'd have like this gourmet type cooking. So when we're getting back to the can I eat it thing, and what you're having right now in little cups, what Ingrid is sharing with you, is mugwort tea. This is mugwort tea. I don't think any of you have ever had this before. But mugwort is this. Okay? You go on a trail, and generally this grows, let's get a better branch. Like that, okay? That kind of leaf. Yeah, this grows in our park. We used to have a whole lot of this growing underneath the bridge or alongside the creek, depending on what nature has provided us as our seeds are drifting down. Even as I speak, hopefully we'll have a whole lot more mugwort growing alongside our creek.
People harvest it too.
Pardon?
People harvest it too.
Yes, they do, because in Chinese acupuncture, this is used for moxibustion. Pardon?
I'm sorry, for what is it used?
Moxibustion. That is when they take the mugwort and it's been dried and they mix it with some wax and it makes like little cones. And like if you were to take this dried mugwort and burn it, it's not going to explode like you imagine a fire to explode. It's a smoldering type of thing. And so since it's such a slow burning plant, and also it smells really good too, they would take these cones and light them on the points that they want you to have heat. And so it's not going to burn your skin at all, but it's a crucial ingredient with it. And mugwort is also useful for women's issues. It's a woman's tea, but it's also for everybody because it's good for ADD, right? You've used that. I've been to Enrique's classroom with A few of the kids had ADD.
For children, I had a full inclusion classroom, which meant I had a range of children from highly gifted to children with schizophrenia.
It's a range.
It is a range. And for many parents, using modern drugs is a very difficult decision, and it's their decision to make. And one of the things that I did was Ron knows, is that I had a 2-acre classroom. Behind my school, I had an outdoor habitat, my outdoor classroom. And we tried to spend as much time there as we could. And it has many of the native plants. And one of the things I would do is I would harvest it 3 days a week. I would take black sage, mugwort, white sage, purple sage, and I would infuse the classroom because many of these contain monoterpenes and diterpenes that help your body. Mugwort is one of them. It relaxes you.
So you would pass that out, and the room smelled of mugwort. It was wonderful, and it seemed to just lower the stress. It was just a marvelous smell. Yes.
It's also very popular in Korean spas. There's a refreshing tank, and they have a giant tea ball of mugwort, literally this big, that they put into that refreshing water, that when you come out of the different pools, you will take a scoop and you pour it over yourself to help cleanse yourself. And that's I believe what they were picking so much mugwort for, the day that they raped our environment here.
And it only grows in a certain region too, so we're very lucky that it grows out here. We look at it that it's like a weed. And in fact, generally most people's first experience with mugwort is, oh, that's a cure for poison oak. And so, have any of you ever heard that before? Yes. And often it does grow right along with the poison oak, but it's not exclusive to that. So let's see.
Don't forget addiction.
Oh, yeah.
And dream. Those two the big
Yes. And so some people will take the dried stems. In fact, the correct way to harvest the mugwort, I use this because I have it green, which is odd for me to cut green mugwort. Normally, you see it as the dead leaves. And so I'll take the stalk and just pull right up on it and leave the stalk, and I grab the leaves. And the leaves, when you crunch it in your hand, stay together. No other leaf out here will stay together in a ball in your hand. Okay? And you can, again, that's used as a fire starter, but the stems that remain is used for addiction. And so if a person has addiction to drugs, to smoking, to anything that you realize that you've got a problem with, the stems are cut and you're given one stem.
You're given a month's supply. It's as long as your index finger. Anytime you get the urge, whatever that addiction may be, you chew on it, you suck on it until there's no more left. We recently treated a young lady at USC who was selling her body to pay her tuition. And somehow she heard about Dr. Adams, and we had a private session with her, and it does work. It's amazing.
So anyhow, when you're chewing it, you're also spitting it out. And actually, I found it to be kind of bitter.
And that's the chemical compounds within it makes it bitter. It has a chemical reaction in your body that, again, monoterpenes and diterpenes, which creates a chemical change in your brain, because that's where the addiction is your brain. And so that changes the chemical composition of your body. And so that's why it works. Chemistry.
Anyhow, this is a very valuable plant to know for our area, is the mugwort. So let's get back to this day and age. Is this edible? Look through that list and tell me what doesn't belong there.
How old are you? In my classroom, they were reading all of it.
So actually, Enrique, you answered that. It all actually is edible, but is it palatable? Is this something that you really want? And why would some people eat some of the stuff that they do? It could be the availability. You know, someone had given one of the definitions with, I think you had done that with ethnobotany is dependent upon the plants that you find locally. And so some people may have plants in our culture that's more accepted than others. And so the availability comes into play. Food security is another one. If somebody has, this applies today as it did historically too. If you have food security, you're not going to maybe eat the lesser foods. And so we have acorns, which is the top of the line food. There's another food I want you to try. It's not dangerous. This happens to be pancakes. But, and it was made
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have plates or do you want to use napkins?
Oh, shoot, we need napkins or something. Oh, okay. And so, this is what I did yesterday. I don't know if, even in this form, if it looks familiar. Buckwheat. Okay, so because we've had all this rain, it knocked down a lot of the buckwheat flower heads. And so I almost felt like I was picking salt. There were so few out there until I went to an area that was known for buckwheat, you know, on one of our local trails. And I was able to get this much. And so we're getting back to food availability. So yes, did they eat buckwheat? Of course they did. But how would you work the buckwheat? So let me show you here. We have the flower heads from the buckwheat. And I'm going to pour some of this into my blender.
Alan, they're asking for
Okay, so while we're waiting for that to settle, I now have flour. So this is all you need to do to make buckwheat flour. There's different types of buckwheat out there, but I didn't use this from yesterday. I had some other fresher buckwheat that I had harvested the fall of last year. Yes?
So if I remember correctly, buckwheat has like a vertical stem, like trees, and I think it come out. What part of the, are you just gathering the seeds? Or
I was just gathering the flower heads. And in fact, actually, when I collected my buckwheat, there was a little pink on it and brown. When I saw that tinge of brown, I knew it was time to harvest, and so I did this in the fall. And so I took it, put it in my blender, and did exactly what I showed you. I made that much into this little bit amount of flour. And like what I do with most of my flowers, I put them in my freezer. And so I knew it was going to be good. Yes?
Are you cutting off the flower head or shaping?
I'm just taking my hands and grabbing the flower heads.
Oh, okay. Just the flower.
And I'm removing the stems if there's any stems or leaves that got stuck in there. It's just strictly the flower head. And so what you're eating, you're not even tasting a difference. This was, I added a fourth. I probably could have gone more, but I didn't have any more in my freezer. But I added a fourth of buckwheat that's locally harvested with regular pancakes. And you don't taste any difference. And so that was my point, that you can stretch your recipes if in hard times. You can take your buckwheat and add it to your existing flour, and you're not going to even know the difference. The thing with the buckwheat is there's no gluten in it. And you need gluten to make bread or to make, things that have to do flour so it sticks together. And so that's why if you're going to go with the buckwheat, either you're going to make a type of gruel from it, or you're going to add it with something that has the ability to raise. If you're going gluten-free, they use tapioca and other things to make it so it will stick. But anyhow, I wanted to show you. I thought this was kind of cool that you could see how that works. Let's see.
Helen, just to be
Yeah.
clear, what I've told them that the buckwheat is edible, but this is not the commercial buckwheat flour and stuff that you buy in markets. That's another.
No, I mean you have wheat. Like when I went to college, this was in the Midwest. There was wheat growing, and once it started to come into play, oh my gosh, they worked 24/7. Because they had to get it harvested quickly before rain came in and started to mold their crops. That's regular wheat.
That's a commercial wheat. Yeah.
Right, and then you have buckwheat, which looks not anything like the buckwheat that we have grown, but they're still both called buckwheat, okay? And we can eat both of them, whether it's the buckwheat that you get at Costco for cowboy buckwheat pancakes, or it's the stuff that we have growing. You can use it. And so, again, when we're talking about availability and food security, it was just because hundreds of, a long time ago, the acorn was the superior food to the buckwheat. And they didn't really talk about it because that was the fast food. In fact, you can go walking along when the buckwheat heads are kind of, tinged brownish. You can pick them and eat them just like that. I mean, it's... You're laughing, I do!
I know you do. I'm hiking you. I know you do.
It's fine.
Cindy's laughing too.
Very nutritional.
It is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
I didn't say that.
And then the other word is entitlement, okay? And so if you think it's below you to eat buckwheat, I mean, some people are entitled. Oh, and why is it that we are interested in eating the wild foods nowadays? I mean, back then, that was the grocery store. But now, why is this sudden interest in it again?
Organic.
It's organic, thank you, and it saves money. It's so much cheaper as long as you make sure it's not by a golf course or a freeway or that they haven't sprayed. But, I mean, if you go off, or you grow it your own, I mean, it can't be better. And then also, don't they say that you should eat your food that's locally harvested? I mean, how much more local can you get, right? And so, you're right. It's in some cases, it's nutritionally superior to what you can get in the supermarket.
Talk about amino acids in the acorn. Yeah.
I can provide that.
Tell them. That's her point, exactly.
Oh, how many was there?
So, remember saying?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, going back to the acorns for a second, and why the popularity has come back, is that because, again, scientists have figured out and analyzed the fact that acorn powder is one of nature's superfoods. Why? Because it contains all the essential amino acids. There's 20 amino acids, none of which we have to take in, our body doesn't create. Those 9, and there's only 3 plants like that. Nopales, the prickly pear cactus, acorns, and then soy, but I'm not a soy boy, so. And that's why it's so important. And that's why each tribe could survive the winter, as Helen said, based on their use of acorns. Because the protein diets that we get promoted, what will they destroy? What will protein destroy in your body? Your kidneys. You cannot process protein at the levels that people promote. You just can't, and ultimately it destroys your kidneys. And that's why acorns are so nutritionally balanced.
Medicine. Okay, so what are some of our medicines? If you got a burn, if you accidentally burned your hand, what plant can you use? Aloe vera. Everyone talks about aloe vera. That's a wonderful plant. It's from South Africa. But let's say we can't get it from South Africa, and you don't have access to your house. What else can work for us?
Eucalyptus.
Yes.
Yeah, eucalyptus is very important for especially when somebody have a problem for the throat.
We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But hold that, and then the other one is mallow. Plants that are in the mallow family. They're not as good. It's kind of like down the order, but they also have that mucilaginous quality to it. Think of okra. You know how okra's kind of gummy? Well, that's in that family too. And so it's that gumminess that helps you with the burn. So yes, we have one. The thing that everybody knows about is the aloe vera, but we should all also be growing Nepalis. That's local. Yes.
You said mallow family? How do you
Yes.
spell that?
M like marshmallow.
M-A-L.
Mallow.
Is our chaparral mallow in the mallow family?
Yes.
We call it that, it's a
Yes,
common
in
name.
fact, we have some of it's growing just outside the
In
parking
front
lot
of
too.
the, yeah, in front of the building we've got it growing.
Right, and then I checked last week. There's these little, like it looks like little green buttons that kind of go on the stems. That's where it gets the name cheeseweed because it looks like the old school cheese wheels that were cut up,
Yeah.
but just tiny. It's like maybe 1/2 of an inch. Well, you can pick those buttons and eat them like green beans. They are really good.
Is that what you would put on the burns? The button?
No, it would be the leaves.
Oh, the leaves.
If you take a couple of the leaves and just smush it, you'll see that there's that gumminess too.
I was gonna say, 'cause I never remember seeing governments.
But you're not going to see it so much with a dry plant as you do with what we've had now. Okay, so, oops, that's okay. So medicine. What are some of the other medicines that we've got? We have willow. Okay, we have willow, and also on the back on the botany trail we have cottonwood, I think crust too. They have salicylic acid in it. If you want to have aspirin, you would take the willow and something about finger thickness, and you would peel the outer bark, and it is the outer bark that you would be peeling off and pouring hot water over it and drinking it. But, disclaimer here, have you ever taken an aspirin and chewed down on it?
Yeah, bitter.
How would you describe that taste?
Bitter.
Bitter, and it's not something that you really want to linger, right? It's going to do the same thing. It's not going to taste the best if you're going to be using the willow or the cottonwood as an aspirin substitute. So if you did use it, you might want to add another plant to it so it will taste much better.
Vodka.
There you go. Ron's a vet. He knows.
Well, I'll share in a minute. It's medicinal. It's medicinal.
Another really good one is yerba santa. I could have brought this with me. I didn't choose to do it, but we had the yerba santa growing, all over Placerita. Yerba santa was once used for tuberculosis for 90 years. Effectively, nobody had any problem with it. And then in the 60s, when they started to change modern medicine to having special studies, and you have to actually make money if you're going to be using these medicines, they stopped using yerba santa and have the medicine that we use today for tuberculosis, except for the last 15, 20 years, you're finding is increasingly less effective for some reason. And there has been talk the last couple of years that they're going to be going back to yerba santa as a cure for tuberculosis. It's also good if you have bronchial issues. You can take the yerba santa, and that's one plant that you can boil. Right?
That's the only medicinal plant you can boil.
And so have you ever had it where you have the steam going on and you have a towel over your head and you're breathing the vapors in? That's yerba santa. We're used to thinking that Vicks is the one that's going to do it. We've all been brainwashed. Seriously, if you were to go online and ask how effective is Vicks Vapor Rub anyhow, make sure it's not anything written by the makers of Vicks, but every other study will say it's a placebo. We've been fooled. And so when you're breathing in the yerba santa, you're expecting this Vicks smell because we've been conditioned to associate Vicks with healing. But it's not. And so when the yerba santa is steaming, when you're breathing it in, it kind of has a spinachy type of smell. And it's actually effective. Okay? And there are two other plants that are good medicines that I asked Enrique to talk about. One of them is the sagebrush remedy.
Limit?
Well, let's just do sagebrush limit now, and then we'll save.
You got 10 minutes before break.
Oh, shoot.
Well, you can have any time you want.
Okay.
It's up to you. This is
Okay, Just quickly with sagebrush liniment.
You could have break 10, 15.
I figure he's a healer. You should talk about the medicine. Sorry about that.
Do all of you know what California sagebrush looks like? All of you? You know it well? You can smell it? You can tell the difference? Take some, pass it down. I love this. Again, the shumash, this is another plant that the shumash used in many different ways. California sagebrush. What's the botanical name for that? Artemisia. Everything thinks it's salvia. It's not. It's an artemisia. Take that and just pass it. Smell it, rub it, rub it. It's one of those you need to rub and release the amount of terpenes in it, diterpenes in it. Cowboy cologne, that's what they called it, cowboy cologne back in the day. Because the cowboys would spend 3 months on the range and they came back and there was no way that they were going to be able to go anywhere near a town smelling the way they did. So they would, before they come into town, they would rub themselves all over. They would rub themselves. The Chumash did the same way. The Chumash, very clean people. They bathed every day. They bathed every day. Before they hunted, they used, the night before, the men would go into the sweat lodge and use white sage and use California sagebrush to clean themselves and cleanse themselves. So the next morning they would put on clean buckskin and stuff themselves with tule, with California sagebrush. Dr. Adams has, one of the things that Dr. Adams as a scientist has done is not only did he work with the Chumash, and still does, but he also broke down every plant on a chemical level. He explains the chemistry, the compounds, and when we go on a walk, we do that. We explain why it works. How many people will die of opiate overdoses this year?
Lots.
Too many? 5,000? 100,000 people. And this is the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They've estimated that this past year, 100,000 people will die of opiate-related death. 100. Well, let that sink in for a minute. That's in the U.S. only. Jack, help me real fast. Jack, you guys know, is a pharmacist from here. Why is synthetic opioids so addictive?
In one sentence or two, right?
It's extremely addictive, and anybody that thinks that they can take opioids and for an extended period of time and then just quit them is crazy.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Because here's what happened. Chuck, come here, please. Help me.
I've got 3 joints replaced.
I know. So, let's say I'm walking down the street and I like that backpack. And I come up and kick you in the shins. What's going to happen?
What's going to happen?
Back. Some of you. I also teach hand-to-hand combat, tactical combat shooting, and knife fighting. I taught my daughters. I have 2 daughters. And they, everybody knows go to the groin. No. You go to the shin. It is much more painful to the shin because it's not like a movie. We teach people to get away. It takes a couple seconds. It's not like the movie. You get away. But in that second, the body reacts. Your pain happens right here. I taught for 35 years. I started when we had to do yard duty. I worked in Lennox. I started teaching in Lennox, and the airplanes would fly over our school because we were under the flight path. The last night waves with pilots. I saw thousands of kids, hundreds of kids fall every day. I never saw one kid fall, scrape his knee, and go, "Oh my God, my head hurts." Because the point of pain is here, 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 wherever it hurts. Because we have pain receptors. We have pain receptors. We've been brainwashed into thinking that oxy, because what it is synthesized from our brain. They figured that out. When that happens, this is what's amazing to me. I mean, it just blows me. I'm a science geek, and when I started learning all this, like, wow. In a blink of an eye, that pain receptor sent a signal to his brain via his nervous system. It came to the back. His thalamus decided what to do with it. Sent it then to the VTA. The VTA then says, release the hounds. Endorphins. What do endorphins do? Happy ending, brother, clap your hands. Yeah. All right. Anybody a runner? Runner's high? The runner's high? Anything you do. I was really famous for making kids laugh because I went to workshops on using comedy in the classroom, seriously. Because one of the things with kids is that, especially if they're not on any medications, that's my 6 hours a day I got to deal with this. So I'd rather have them laughing than going off on me, which did happen sometimes. But the chances of when endorphins are moving through your body, number one, they suppress your breathing this much. It allows your body to respond and react. If you're trained, you're going to kick me back because you're going to suppress that pain. Your body is going to deal with that pain on this level. Oxy is on this level, correct? Who died that was famous recently?
Luke Perry.
Of an opioid-related. He had a stroke.
Lots of people.
Well, too famous. But you notice that it never happens. We don't know until it happens. Tom Petty.
Yes. Yeah.
Prince. They died. Why? Because when you have an opioid-related death, it's because, number one, it shuts off your breathing. Those natural endorphins suppress your breathing just enough for the body to get just enough natural opioids so that you can take that next step and go get help. Because what happens if the pain is overwhelming to our bodies?
Pass out?
You pass out. You get going to shock. You pass out. And that's our body's natural response to it. So how did this happen? California Save for Us has 15 monoterpenes and a few diterpenoids that all address pain. They transfer through your skin to that pain receptor and shut down that pain. Pain does not happen in our brains. The synthetic opiates, that's why Jack said, it's so hard to get off. In 30 days, you're hooked, done, boom. Because you build up that tolerance because you say, oh man, that's a great feeling, I need more. So 1 pill becomes 3, 3 becomes 6, 6 becomes 9, and so forth. So at the end of 30 days, you are hooked. And Jack's right. The other thing that people don't know is that once you're hooked on opioids, it takes a long time to get off.
You know, I had 3 joints replaced. I had both knees done, I had my hip done. And every time, you know, they're sending you home with all your meds. What they send you home with is a bottle full of OxyContin or something like that, pills. And the expectation is that you're going to take these maybe every so many hours. And there's a whole pill bottle full of them. So for each joint replacement, I said, the night I got home, I'll take 1 because I know it's going to hurt. And then after that, it was Tylenol for 6 weeks. But I was afraid to take those OxyContin.
Jack, besides death, what's another side effect of opioids to your body?
Constipation.
Yeah.
Constipation.
To me, constipation is worse than death.
No shit.
It is worse.
Can you get hooked on the sagebrush then if you use it like?
In fact, there are people, no, that's a great question, thank you. There are people who have actually gotten off opioids using this. Are you in pain right now? Are you in pain right now?
No, not really.
Is anybody in pain? This is statistically
Over here, Enrique.
This is statistically. We had 24 grad medical students on Sunday at a walk, and I asked the same question. And we all looked around at each other. I said, guys, I took statistics 4 times. 2 times undergrad and 2 times grad school. This is statistically impossible. 24 people, all of them have no pain. This is only topical. It contains white sage, a leaf of white sage. Rub it. Okay. It contains a leaf of white sage. It contains sagebrush. It contains 1 cut up avocado pit. We use that for the oil. Then you take it and you fill the jar with alcohol. Or tequila.
Or vodka.
Or vodka. I will tell you that personally, I've tried each of them. I had knee surgery 3 years ago now, and I took 1, I was a good husband. Doc, I listened to my wife. Here, you gotta take it, Anybody ever had morphine? That was my first time I had morphine. That was good stuff.
I'm sure that they gave
That was good stuff. But I could tell my body was going. I got home and I was coming around. I could tell my body, and right away after within minutes, I took that oxy. My stomach was just awful, and I was constipated the whole night. Question?
Yeah, you should have said my pain is back pain, lower back pain. I would stock up on that.
You make words.
Obstacle course here.
Okay, so I'm not a medical doctor. I don't have, okay, so don't disrobe in front of me. We actually have right here. Helen, been there. True or not true?
It's absolutely true.
Here we go. It's true. I tell them.
Yes.
Cold. Jack, you had a comment or a question?
I just was wondering what vehicle you used to put that.
I hope it works.
Okay, so starting from the top. 1 leaf of white sage, simply because of the fact that it's ceremonial, it's medicinal. We're blessing the medicine, we're blessing the patient. Number 2, we cut up the avocado pit. I'll pass this around. 3, we fill this California sagebrush. Then we fill it. I tried all 3. To me, the most effective is 70% rubbing alcohol. You can use tequila. Dr. Adams is a former teacher. She liked to use tequila. I've tried it. It smells great. People complain about this. It has an alcohol smell, but get over it. Your pain is a little more important. Okay? I have treated a gunshot wound victim. We have treated people with broken bones. We have treated people with lots, and I can go down the list of pains. Okay, so I made this the other day. So 226, I date it, and 6 weeks later, I decant it. Question?
Is it a numbing effect? Is that
How's your back?
what does it do?
It's a numbing effect.
How's your
That's what I was
back?
wondering.
What did you feel within 10 seconds? What did you feel?
A numbing effect.
A warm or numbing?
Because when it goes through your skin. Okay? Jack can tell you. It goes through your skin. Remember, your pain receptors are not that deep. They're right there. It's just like a natural endorphin. They go to those pain centers, they shut down that pain. It's called a chemokine cycle. In fact, what's the other bad thing about opiates, Jack, in terms of making it worse? Don't they make it worse, the pain worse?
Yeah, they take care of the pain, but you have to take more tablets in order to get rid of the same amount of pain.
Exactly, that's part of the chemokine cycle in your body. Our bodies create that cycle, and then this breaks it. The opioids make your pain worse. So that's your cycle that a person gets trapped in, and you start taking more. Oh, I need 3 now, I need 6 now, and by 30 days, you are hooked. There's no question, you are hooked. How do you feel now?
A little better. Well, to be honest, the pain was a little lower, but I couldn't tell you that. Not in front of the people.
Medical students are funny. You go behind a bush and swing. So, This is an amazing medicine. This is an amazing, amazing medicine because it costs you what? It cost me what? I paid a 2-pack at Costco was $3, $3.65 for the 2 bottles of alcohol. I always buy a case of this, of these, what, $10, and I make 12 different jars of it. I give it away as gifts. Cindy, you have a question?
I'm going to ask you, when I was a docent last year, and we were learning about all the plants, you're smelling them, and so with the sagebrush, I was smelling it, with the sage, I was smelling it. And then about a couple weeks later, I got this rash that went up in my nose. And I went to a doctor, and he gave me 3 or 4 different kinds of creams. For eczema, they're telling me I've got eczema, I've got all this stuff. And I had this for almost, say, 3 months. It would flare up and then it'd go away. And I have a lot of skin allergies. I can't use.
People who are extremely sensitive, like Cindy, who have a lot, especially skin allergies, may react to this. So we always ask people, do you have skin allergy? Do you have this allergy? But very few people. Unfortunately, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
very small.
but when we went on that hike one time, and with you,
Okay.
and I had a sore.
Oh yeah, I remember.
neck,
I remember.
And you spritzed my neck. It really helped. So I'm just wondering if you use the actual plant, maybe the intensity of it causes more of a reaction, but when you use it where it's more infused with other things, maybe it's not.
It's a very powerful plant. Remember, it has 15 different molecules. Question and question. Yes.
Yeah, and how does your preparation compare with those with the CBD oils and?
That's a different topic. That's a different issue. CBD, not the oils. Dr. Adams this year was the first professor at a major university in the United States who taught a class on CBD, on medical marijuana. Okay. His take on it is that there's only 3 issues where you should smoke it. Everything else, it's CBD oil or CBD balm. The one he suggests is Papa's and Barclay's 3-to-1 ratio. It only has 1% of THC. Remember, the THC is what gets you high.
Right.
The balm goes right through your skin like this. We've treated people with anxiety. I've seen it in front of my eyes.
So is there a difference between if
Because this is in terms of, and it depends on what pain you're talking about too.
what if
How
you're talking
serious?
about, the pain right under the skin, the
Both will
muscular
work.
kinds of things?
Both will work. I will tell you that CBD balm is a lot more expensive than this.
But I can tell you, because I have experience with the CBD for anxiety. I used to take it. I used to take Xanax. When there were some specific issues going on. This CBD is so much better. You feel it like within minutes, and it's not addictive. It's like how Xanax can create problems. But anyhow, we have a lot more to cover. I like what we're doing right now with medicine, and this is a really.
I had a question over here about this. No,
I was just wondering if there was some kind of microscopic organism or something, maybe an insect that you got in.
No, it is a skin. Dr. Adams just talked about it. People,
Right,
there's some people that are very sensitive to. Remember, your mucus. You have mucus membrane. I'll talk about this more when I talk about the powders. But we have mucus in our nose, in our gut, in our intestines. When you get a dry throat, when you get a dry nose, that mucus is what protects you. Protects your gut, protects your body, and breathing. So that's really important to stay that balance in terms of that mucus, because people underestimate that a lot. Jack, yes or no? The mucus is very important. People, kids in my class, I taught them how to blow their nose. I taught them math, but I also taught them how to blow their nose. And a lot of times, kids' goal is to get it all out. I said, no, leave some of that in there. It protects you. Thanks.
Okay. But we need to go back to this for the end of the second part, because this is a great subject. So with the plants, we know about food, we talked about medicine, and the third thing that's left as to why ethnobotany is important is utilitarian. And so that would be shelter, fire, and weapons. Okay? And so one of the things that's important in functioning is cordage. And so if you're with anybody who does outdoor type things, you will inevitably learn how to make cordage. And so why is it that you need it? Look at all the things that it can produce. I need some help here. When Sue gave her program on Native American, she talked about cordage. You guys were doing a little bit of it from yucca. And I want to show you what happens if you happen to be Lester cursed with OCD. And
Okay, I'm sorry. So I had a question. Mr. Garcia was coming, the native Chumash man was coming to my class the next day, and I asked, and I had a question, so I called Helen. Hey, Helen, I got a question. What are you doing? I'm making cordage. How many you got? How many feet you got? What are you doing? Oh, I got like 10 feet already. I'm like, okay, Helen.
Janice, hold this. Yeah. Who feels like walking and help? I need another person to stand here. And you're told. Okay.
Behind you, Helen.
Okay. Okay. sorry.
You've already got one.
So I need somebody else to unwind this because I want you to see what happens with one phone conversation. Okay, here we go. Could you hold it right here? Thank you. Okay, and just keep going back and forth. And so this is one conversation, and it was just, from yucca, you can just keep on feeding it in. And I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of yucca, though. When you have your kids from 500 years ago, as well as today, we needed to make materials to build your shelter. You're not going to be going to Home Depot. And this is convenient. Let's say if you happen to be dropped on an island or near one of those type of TV survival shows. These are invaluable skills to know. But you can carry things. I mean, you can, starting a fire, pulling your hair out of your way, even wicks. You can have a little oil lamp and then have your cordage there. So I want you to see what, I measured this, and it is exactly 82 feet. And if we were outside, I would have had you go outside to see how long 82 feet is. And this is important because I'm going to show you another group of people who built a bridge. And they do this every year. And it's the basic move that I did here with this long yucca. And we're going to see two different bridges. One is going to be before a break, and it's a Peruvian bridge. And one is going to be done by a spider who can make this length of 82 feet. So let's move to this.
Okay, let me plug it in.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's enough. You guys can Thank you. We'll leave this here. We'll put this on the ground carefully for now.
Why did you stop?
Because I want you to watch it.
No, I mean, why did you stop me?
I ran out of yucca. It forced me to. How do we turn off the lights here?
Turn on the lights?
Turn off the lights so you can see this.
Switch off.
Oh, good. Okay.
Twisted to form a larger rope, and the ropes are then braided.
How many yucca did it take to do?
The Quechua Bridge in Peru was rebuilt every year using traditional Inca engineering techniques by the local communities on either side of the canyons. This bridge has been continually rebuilt in the same location since the time of the Incas. The entire bridge is built in only 3 days. To construct the bridge, grass guacoyo is harvested and then prepared to be woven into large cables, beginning with small cord, which is twisted together from the local grass. These cords are then twisted to form a larger rope, and the ropes are then braided to create the main cable. Up on the highway, the community works together to pull these ropes to stretch them out. These ropes are woven and twisted. Each rope is made from 30 of the small cords, and then 3 of these ropes are braided to form the cables that will support the bridge. After more stretching, the cables are then carried down to where the bridge will be installed. The old bridge is used to run the first cable across for what will become the new bridge. And then the old bridge is cut down and it falls into the water and is washed away by the river. All day long, the community pulls on the new cables to prepare them for the bridge. These supporting cables are anchored to the stone abutments on either side of the canyon. Victoriano Arizapana is the architect of the bridge, and he uses traditional methods which have been handed down in his family for centuries.
Trabajé porque mi papá me ha puesto, he empezado desde los 12 añitos. En eso tanto el puente es una cata, no, Monaco, o sea, Huawei Cadena, desde Monaco.
The structure of the bridge is made with 4 cables for the floor and 2 handrails. The bridge weaving begins in the morning, with Victoriano weaving from one side and another worker weaving from the other side until they meet in the center of the bridge. When the bridge is finally finished, the communities come together to celebrate. The structure is remarkably safe. It has been built for centuries in this way and can hold dozens of people at any one time.
Okay? How do I stop it? Just stop it.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so, and this is ongoing. It's still happening today. And so I just wanted you to see, this is the beginning of it. It's pretty much like what I started, but we haven't built a bridge. Anyhow, it is 10:15. How much time do we have for a break?
15 minutes. They get back.
And it was soon used for other applications, like combat helmets, bulletproof vests, heat-resistant clothes for firefighters, motorcycle clothes. It was called, this miracle substance was called Kevlar. And we still have Kevlar today. And so that was like the awesome fabric of our world for many, many years, until 2009 came along. And someone discovered an insect called the Darwin bark spider. And again, you saw what 82 feet is like. And that's the length of the web the spider.
So press the bottom button and that should
Okay,
start
so
it.
this.
Like a real-life spider woman, she sprays strands of silk in one long, continuous flow. The threads fan out like a sail and drift on air currents blowing across the water. Every few seconds, she crimps the strands together to stop them spreading too widely. The breeze will do the rest, blowing the threads into a single line and a 25-meter bridge. Now she must reinforce her bridge because her web will hang from it. But there's something bouncing the line at the other end. Another Darwin spider is trying to take advantage of her hard work. She must deal with the intruder head-on. The cut line is an inconvenience, but no more than that. With hooks on the tips of each leg, she gathers in the thread. It won't go to waste, as she'll eat it later. When it's all reeled in, she sprays again. outstreams another 25-metre bridging line. How a spider no bigger than the thumbnail can produce so much silk so quickly has baffled scientists. And it's no ordinary silk. It's the toughest natural fibre on the planet, tougher than steel. And it needs to be tough to span the wide river. With the bridge taut and the ground anchor in place, it's time to construct her trap. These spiders can build the world's largest orb webs, up to 2 meters wide. A few hours from the first spray of bridging line, the job is done.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Just pause it, or stop it.
Let's stop.
I have to
Oh,
say
okay, so it's
one
stopped.
thing. I have to
So-
say one thing.
What's that?
BBC nature films are the best.
Yes, yes they are. So this substance is also called dragon silk. It's 10 times stronger than Kevlar, and it's the strongest biological material we have on this planet today. And right now, our Department of Defense is using it. It's not commercially available, but I just wanted you to see another 82-foot bridge of this spider, and it was just a new discovery. And so, who knows? In another 10 years, when you study this, what other wonderful things are going to be coming out of nature inspiration? Yes.
What was the spider catching?
I'm sorry.
What was the spider catching?
Insects.
Insects, and also the spiders are cannibalistic, and so what they're doing is they're breeding them with silkworms, and so that's how they're able to get this project going. What an interesting combination. Let me go on to the next one. Okay. So design and products inspired of nature use these simple rules. That nature runs on sunlight, nature uses only the energy it needs. Think of the holes that you see in the ground. Do ground squirrels make them bigger because they want to have a better house? Only people do that. Critters only do what they absolutely have to have. Nature fits form to function. Nature recycles everything. Nature rewards cooperation. Can we think of any plants that do that? We have the symbiotic relationship with the yucca and the yucca moth, and there's many other things that we'll get into. Nature banks on diversity. Absolutely. We can get in trouble if we don't have diversity. So one of the things that using these simple, there's many products that we're going to see that follow these simple rules, is solar cells. Now solar cells were inspired by leaf cells. Recently, they've been improved by 47%, and this is within the last 2 years, by nanotechnology. The plant cells convert sunlight into chemical energy, and they discovered that the chemical energy is applicable to polymers and organic cells. So, amazing what a simple leaf can do. Burdock. This is how this all started.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. After a hiking trip in the Alps with his dog, George de Mestrel's dog was covered with burdock burrs. And we have that growing out here too. And so he's cleaning it off of the dog's fur, and he started to see, well, why is it that makes these burrs stick to the fur anyhow? And he looked at it under a microscope and saw that it's a series of hooks and loops. And he wanted to see if he could make it too. And this is how Velcro got started. But it was developed and patented in 1955.
Wow.
As the zipperless zipper.
Space race.
Were we excited about that? No. In 1955, nobody really cared for it until NASA saw that there was a need for it, and then Pierre Cardin thought that NASA was kind of cool, and he started to incorporate it in his clothes, and then the rest is history. Oh, look at that. We really don't like Russian tumbleweeds, do we? Because we see them, going down the road, and when they're little tiny plants, they're actually edible. But when they're in the state of the tumbleweed that we see going across the road, there's seeds inside them too. And that's, as they're bouncing along, that's what's happening. But, okay, so our NASA robotic rover was patterned after the tumbleweed. They originally put into space a 6-wheeled, 400-pound robot, and quickly after it went to Mars, it was stuck in Martian sands since January 2010. And so now it's downgraded from a rover to a stationary science station. It doesn't move. And that's why this was invented. And right now, there's still limited data on how far we're going along with our research. Have you ever been outside on a trail and you want to take pictures and you want to look back on your camera to make sure that you took a picture correctly? And there's glare and you're trying to do one of these things, you're looking for shade and it just doesn't work well. Guess what, folks? They're developing a screen or a screen attachment that you can put on your phone that will completely wipe out that glare. So in bright sun, you're going to be able to see what's going on your phone. And how did this come about? Well, let's see. The darndest thing, it's an elephant hawk moth caterpillar. How is it?
Bottom button.
Okay.
Now, I found something amazing in my garden. This is an elephant hawk moth larvae. And as you can see, he's pretty cool, isn't he? He's massive. He's at least 3 inches. And I found him in my vegetation, which goes to show you've got to be really careful when you're clearing up in your garden this time of the year. It's September time, so all these little guys here are getting ready to go down and hibernate. The elephant hawk moth caterpillar or larvae are generally seen from July to September with enormous black eye spots towards the head. When disturbed, they swell up to show these enormous spots, at the same time shrinking in their tiny front head. This hopefully scares off predators in the process. The tail spike is completely harmless and there for show alone. He's going to grow up into a big hawk moth, and you'll see them. They're one of the biggest ones, the most spectacular moths in England. He's got these fabulous little eyes, if you can see there, on his back, that will scare off predators. They love to eat fuchsias, and they love broadbay willow herb, otherwise known as fireweed. And I actually have some fireweed here in my garden. So once I'm done showing him to you, I'm going to pop him back so he can have a lovely meal. Once the larvae has fed enough on plants such as willow herb, fuchsia and bedstraw, they will overwinter as chrysalids, hidden amongst low vegetation and soil, to emerge the following spring as a beautiful pink and green nectar-feeding moth with a large 6 to 7 centimetre wingspan. These moths are not considered to be endangered. However, if you do disturb one, make sure you put it back into an area to which it is accustomed to.
It stopped?
Yeah.
Okay. So the important thing about that particular moth is it doesn't reflect at night. Have you ever been out at night and you can see if there's raccoons or cats, you always get that little reflection? This gives no reflection, and yet it can see perfectly. And so that's where they started to figure out, why is it? We've never known anything in nature that doesn't have that reflection at night, but this did. And so even now, it's the inspiration for solar. Some of our solar cells are using some of the technology they've just begun with. But anyhow, the main thing they want to get is our screens that won't have that reflective glare. It will cut it out. And I mean, you also have windshields. Do you ever drive early morning or as the sun is going down, and even with the visor, this is some technology that's going to be infused into that. Okay, so we've heard about making a better mousetrap. What about making a better umbrella? So people were beginning to wonder about ladybugs. You ever see these teeny little ladybugs? And when they fly, the wingspan is huge. And how is it that a ladybug can fold all that wing into that little tiny beetle? And so they were trying to, take apart a ladybug, and it wasn't working. They couldn't get the mechanism, so they wound up putting fake nails on it, the same coating, and they were able to study it. So I want to show you what happens when a ladybug unfolds its wings.
It'll be fine.
Okay, so that technology is going into foldable solar panels for space and for satellites, and they find that it's also 10 times stronger by folding it the same. They've studied this in depth, and it's just, it's going into our space program now. So, amazing what they can do. Have you ever noticed a pine cone? When it's ready to rain, it closes up. Now, if you have a sponge, when it gets wet, it expands. And when it's dry, it contracts and gets smaller again. But we have things like pine cones that don't pay attention to those rules, and they do the reverse, and they will close up when it's raining and open up when it's not. And they were trying to figure out, why is that? What's the logic behind it? And through that, they have come up with a fabric that's smart fabric that will close up its fibers when you're cold, and when it's hot, will open its fibers. So you're not going to be able, it will expand and contract on your body. So this is something, again, that they already have the technology, they know how to do this, but like so many good products or projects that they're working on, there's one thing that kind of makes it difficult to get to you, the consumer, and that is the business aspect of it. And so it has to go through patent laws, it has to go through a whole lot of red tape before it's deemed safe and they're able to finally produce it. But I'm just telling you, this is cool that we have this technology out here. I wanted to talk about this too. Where did this go? Midnight. Okay. Has anyone ever stood next to a sunflower and felt weak because it's just so big? And you look at it and say, wow, Look at this flower. This flower is taller than me. This flower is winning, and I'm losing. Has anyone ever thought that? Well, if you have, then you're not ready to hear about trees, okay? But anyhow, I want to talk about the sunflower. Have you heard that it works on a circadian rhythm? It changes its head, based on, or the stem moves it based on what's going on outside and the hour of the day. And let's learn a little bit about this before I ramble.
No, you're not going crazy. Young sunflowers really do follow the sun from east to west and back on most days. Biologists and researchers say it has to do with a sort of internal clock.
Just like you and me, that regulates our sleep patterns, plants have a circadian clock as well. And in the case of solar tracking, they help to have the plant follow the sun throughout the day.
The sunlight-sensitive leaves, along with the internal circadian clock, help to physically tilt the sunflower.
That causes hormones to be distributed differently on the different sides of the plants, and that causes unequal growth.
You'll find that after a while, your sunflowers may just look east once they're fully grown.
But there's a benefit to them facing east when they're mature, and that's to help attract pollinators in that warm morning sun.
If you would like to learn more about the science of moving sunflowers, just head over to our website, WTHITV.com. In Terre Haute, Matt Brooks, News 10.
Okay, so the importance of this is they understand that if we don't get enough sleep, and if we work with our circadian rhythm, it actually can either age us faster or keep us healthier longer. And so that's the importance of studying the circadian rhythm with sunflowers, and that's a very obvious thing, is to follow this pattern. Let's see, this was the University of Maryland. We're not talking about NASA. Was having fun one day looking at the maple trees. You've seen the maple seeds, right? You ever see some of these maple seeds and just like fling them up? Okay, and so when we're flinging these up, in fact, here, have some. Play with them. Okay? I want you to play with some of these maple seeds and fling them up. And watch them as they're twirling around. Okay? And it's kind of a fun thing. I mean, did you ever do these when you were kids? Yes, come on. And so when they were playing around with this, they actually had like millions of these in wind tunnels and such. And they were trying to come up with, said, well, these are like little helicopters. Is there any technology that can come from that? And they found that, yeah, there actually is. And it comes with aircraft. Let's say you're in a plane or a helicopter and you're losing propellers. And they're looking at how this will gently go down, because you can't take one of these and just watch it go straight down. It does this twirly thing. And so using the technology on a maple seed is what's going on at University of Maryland right now when it comes to aircraft. And in fact, they're doing some of this on a small scale. If you were to go to Venice Beach, when they're selling things, in the little vendors, they have the remote control, the little, what do you call it?
Drones?
The drones, yes. And it's using, pardon?
You don't have one?
I don't have a drone, no, but I know that there are other people around here who do. And they're already incorporating some of this in their aircraft. And so I was told that when I was collecting the maple seeds, and there was a couple wondering why I was grabbing cigarette butts, and I said, it's not cigarette butts, it's this. And so we got to talk, and that's when they said, oh, I saw that at Venice Beach, and this is what they're working with. And so I guess when they start coming with technology, it starts on the, for a child's toy.
Cool.
Yes. Okay. All right. So what is the most expensive liquid on Earth?
Water.
What is it? Most expensive liquid. Would it be human blood? No, but that's... Okay. What about mercury? Not mercury either. Chanel number 5? Not that either. How about king cobra venom? We're getting there. You know, that could possibly be. But there's something that's even more priceless than king cobra venom, and that is scorpion venom. How do you milk a scorpion? Okay, and how did this happen? And what's this have to do with ethnobotany? Well, I'll tell you. There was a Chinese man named Li Lugun who was angry 30 years ago when a scorpion stung him. And he was so angry, he took the scorpion and he bit the head off. And he said, oh, it was sweet and nutty-like. It's kind of like fried beans. And so it's like, huh. And so he started to deliberately seek out scorpions because he wanted to eat them because he thought it tasted really good. And so he worked himself up to eating 20 of these a day. And now if they sting him, he doesn't get affected at all by him. But then youth in his country were purposely wanting to get stung when they heard about his escapades. And there's a reason for it, because it was also inducing a type of a drug high. Okay, and but what was happening is the sting would be painful, but it would also create a euphoria-like reaction. And so folks wanted to figure out what's going on here. You know, what happens when somebody is eating the head off of scorpions. And they found out that there was a painkiller that was equal to what they were giving cancer patients. And so now those who are working in the area of lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and cancer are studying scorpion venom. And what was used before, you know, or what's currently being used is, am I saying this right? Quinines? Quinine, yes. And that's found in the cinchona tree. Mm-hmm. And then also there's antimalarials that's found in yew trees, and yew trees grow out here. And so stuff that we have that we thought was good and is still right now being effective may soon be replaced by scorpion venom. So what I've got next is... Scorpions?
Let's all take a bite.
Do we have one of our tags?
You don't know how long we do.
We have some around here.
So I'd like to hand these out. This is on the historical use of plants. I think I'm done with this now.
You done with that?
Yeah, I'm done.
Turn on the lights. Okay.
As we can turn on the lights.
You want the lights on?
Yes, we can have lights on. We're done with that. So getting into the historical use of plants. Oh, you need one. No, I'm reading.
No.
Okay.
I know where you live.
Okay. So this is just to get you started. You know, this is by no means the full and complete list. The first thing I have listed is dyes and inks that we can get out of our plants. We have dyes that come from our larkspur, gumweed, rubber rabbit bush, and I started to write down the colors of it. So plants can produce dyes and inks. We can get cordage from our plants. Now I did it from stinging nettle, but you can also, from yucca, but it also comes from nettle, from milkweed, dogbane. The categories here are weaving. That comes with basketry, but it's not limited to basketry. Okay.
Now you tell them I have to go to the bathroom. Really?
And medicine. Okay. Well, that was going to be his cue. Okay. And so we talked about yerba sansa, sage, milk thistle. You know, when we see milk thistle, it's a plant that has the green leaves and has a little white that kind of go through it. And we look at it as this is a horrible plant because it's a non-native invasive one. But are you aware that if you were to go to certain countries in Europe, they actually grow it commercially? because they find that there's great medicinal properties to be had for it. In fact, with our milk thistle, when the seed head, when the flower expires and you have the seed head, there's little seeds inside. It looks like kind of like the size of a grain of grass. It's a little bit wider though, and that's used for people who have liver damage, liver problems. In fact, I saw this from 4 different sources now, and when Florence comes out, I'll be curious to ask her. When there are certain mushrooms, like the deadly Amanita, that they say that there's no cure. Once you know that you've had that, you're going to die. Except from these other sources, they're experimenting with the milk thistle seed, because the Armenitas affects your liver, and this helps your liver. And so, it's just kind of interesting that we're trying to get rid of it because we think this is a non-native. Yes.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, okay.
Keep talking, then I'll tell you.
No, I want to hear.
Oh, I was talking to Russ about milk. I'm pretty sure it's milk thistle. And I had a picture, and he said, yeah, this is, and it's a horrible non-native. It's hard to get rid of, and we're doing our best to get rid of it. I mean, I've seen areas like Towson Canyon, it's destroying huge areas of milk thistle because it's really a bad plant.
So I wanted to harvest the seeds from it one day, and so I went around at Towsley, and I'm cutting off the seed heads, and of course the ranger and a couple other people stopped me. What are you doing? And as soon as they heard that I'm cutting the heads off, it's like, take all you want, please, by all means.
He said Malibu had a major problem.
Well, they're only allowed to spray alongside the road. They can't get into the park. But the thing is, people are in such a hurry to get rid of things like horehound and milk thistle, but what about the grasses? The grasses is what's knocking out our native plants more than anything, and it's because it's not very glamorous to pull out grass as it is to get these bigger plants. But I mean, it would be nice to get back to what it once was. I know at Malibu Creek, the park before Malibu Creek State Park that Florence used to teach from, and the people in Malibu wanted to it was like a community thing. Let's get rid of the non-natives. And they did an incredible job. And you should see the variety of other things that came back when the non-natives were gone. But that included grass.
Yeah.
And there's a problem when you're pulling out grass or things that you don't want. If you leave too much soil exposed, it lets other non-natives come in. In fact, that's what we found here at the center. We're digging, pulling some things out. What was it that we were doing, Dan? It was alongside the Hillside Trail a couple of years ago with Robert. And then plants came back with a vengeance. And so if you're digging things out, you have to not have too much ground disturbed too, because other things will say, nice soil, I'm going to come here, right? Okay, so other uses, you can see on your handout, it goes through your teeth. If you have teeth issues, you can chew on the willow, you can chew on the bay. There's, when you see the wild cucumber, you've seen the little scouring thing. It's, frustrating that I don't have it here with me. We're not on a trail, but when it's peeled and removed, it makes a good scour. It also makes like a loofah sponge. And so you can see all the different uses there. We have a ton of plants that work for soap. We have a bunch of plants that work for fuel. And at the very bottom of this list is 2 sources for native plants. So as you learn these plants, and when we start having not rainy days that we can go out more on hikes. In fact, if we have time, we might be able to go out a little bit today.
Yay.
These are the sources. Theodore Payne Foundation is right here in Sun Valley, and they have just about anything you'd want when it comes to native plants. And it will come in seed form or small plant form. But we also have Matahilla Nursery that's out towards Moore Park. And so the difference between the two, other than someone is closer to us, is the Theodore Payne has plants on all different levels of expertise when it comes to gardening. And so ask them, I'm a beginning gardener, or whatever your level is, will I kill this plant? And make sure that you understand what is involved in order to get a native plant to grow in your yard. I tried to do that once with yerba santa when I lived out in the valley, and I bought yerba santa 4 times, and I planted. Ground was great, and after a couple months it died, and it was like, what am I doing wrong? And I'd look it up, and and eventually I learned what I needed to do was get wood that was not treated and burn it, and the ash from untreated wood was to go into the prepared hole, and then I needed to sprinkle liquid smoke in there too. Yeah, from the grocery store I was supposed to put liquid smoke because I needed to fool the yerba santa into thinking that a fire went by. And so that's what I'm telling you. Some of the plants, you need to know a little bit of background of the plant so you're not going to kill it. And then other ones, like the ones at Matahila, they only sell plants that you'll have a really good chance of not killing. Okay, but their selection, their variety isn't as great. And so that's the difference between the two. So theater paint, you need to ask specifically, what you're getting, how difficult it is to grow. And the Matahila, you stand a better chance of having that survive your yard. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to you to learn.
How much time do you want me to use? You tell me. I'll do it.
15 minutes. It'll go up. 17 and a half.
I'll set a timer.
Where's the... I need water. Did you bring water? Thank you. Aloe vera. This is the gel. It's pure. Trader Joe's, Sprouts, everyone has it. Beginner gel. 1 orange. I'm sorry, 1 apple. One orange. How old is this plant species?
Very.
Very.
No pun?
No pun.
Thousands.
Thousands of years. 1963 to 1965, Dr. Robert Rish, University of Illinois, and his graduate students excavated a new site found in Mexico called Puebla, near Puebla. During the dig, they found jars, hermetically sealed for thousands of years. They found the remnants in a dehydrated pad. They had it carbon dated. Came back at 10,000 years. Carbon dating is plus or minus 2,000 years. So honestly, at least 10,000 years, and probably more. Like the acorns, this is now considered a superfood. Why? Again, this contains all the essential amino acids. Why? Because it impacts every body system that we have, every one of them. I'll come to the top. You gotta be really precise. When Helen mentioned burns, skin issues, this is now a plant that they've known and studied for almost 50 years. And we're not talking, so about a cup of water. Where's the top? Hit it.
If you don't have the aloe vera in a container.
The aloe vera is a binder. It's a binder. That's all it is. It's not 100% essential. Go. You now have one of nature's amazing, amazing, amazing plants. talking about medicine and your food. That's one of them. So Dr. Robert McNeish and his graduate students found nopal, prickly pear cactus. They found zapote, which is a Mexican fruit. They found palm seeds. They found mesquite. Okay, and they found amaranth in jars sealed. Okay, if you're a big schmuck scientist, you get to look at them in the hermetically sealed room and, you know, put the suit on, the whole 9 yards. But that's an amazing plant. Why? So let's go back quickly. 1531, Cortez conquered Mexico. So Spanish started spreading throughout Mexico, different areas. At the same time, they were sending more explorers. They already had established in what is now the Caribbean different forts, and then they used those forts to resupply ships before they wanted to start going north and explore what we now know as Florida. So the famous Nunez expedition, 600 people, 600 men, cattle, horses, everything, went up the coast of Florida. What unfortunately they didn't understand was weather. And what does unfortunately Florida get a lot of? Hurricanes. Both ships were destroyed. 600 people. The captain said, all right, let's start rebuilding this, and he started sending out groups. One group was headed up by a man named Alvaro Cabeza de Vaca. He had 3 other shipmates, one of which was Esteban, a black slave. They explored a little bit, came back, 600 people, 594 people were gone. Disappeared. There are books written about this event, there are movies, there are PhD dissertations written on this one. He had no choice. Let's start walking. And if you've ever been on a hike with Helen, that's sort of what it was like. Let's go. But Helen, there's no trail. Let's go. I'm surprised you don't have a shake. So get this one, guys. For 8 years, these 4 men walked across the southern portion of the United States. 8 years. Okay, not 8 hours, 8 weeks, 8 months, 8 years. Along the way, they found tribes, different villages, different indigenous peoples. Cabeza de Vaca was a very intelligent man. He decided, we want to survive. I'm not a conquistador today. I'm going to learn from these people. So as a result of learning and respecting these indigenous people, for 8 years they survived. They learned how to use the food, they used the plants, they used everything that they could that the different tribes taught them. They were actually captured and made slaves. But one day, they came upon a village, and the story goes in his book. There was a young man, he had an arrowhead stuck in his sternum. The shaman did not know what to do. All explorers had basic first aid. Took it out, cauterized it, sewed it up. Well, to the tribe, he was a god. This knowledge that this man has. So they made him a shaman. From that point forward, when he would walk with his men across the southern portion of the United States, they would have an entourage. The village was going to accept them as just amazing people. In his book, he talks about how the nopal cured his men of scurvy, what we know as scurvy now, of skin conditions, those are his words, of stomach ailments, his words. Again, the nopal has every amino acid. It deals with every body system and addresses. Okay? Anybody know diabetes? Anybody know someone who had diabetes? It's my father-in-law, God rest his soul, passed away 2 years ago. He died in diabetic. My father was a very traditional macho Mexican man. He was a horse rider. He had property. He had horses. He dressed like, you know. But he had heart bypass surgery. They took him out of his legs. Never healed. Started chopping him away. And my wife would still have a hard time with that. I do too. Diabetes in this country is out of control. The World Health Organization says by 2020, 2030, there's going to be over 300 million people in the world with diabetes. This has cured type 2 diabetes. Again, it's not me, it's the literature. It says it. Last summer in July, we had a symposium, Dr. Adams and I, part of a symposium in Ohio. I taught people how to make it just like I just did right now. Talked a little bit about it. 6 weeks later, we always send a survey out. How are you doing with this med? How are you doing with this? Are you using it? Are you not using it? This woman wrote back, "My dear healers, I want you to know that prior to coming to the class, I was 2 weeks away from gastrointestinal surgery. My doctor wanted to remove 2 feet of my intestine. I can even imagine the surgery plus the recovery time, plus everything you have to deal with." She says, "At this point, I am asymptomatic. All my conditions are gone. All my gastro issues are gone. My doctor does not know how to explain it. He would like to talk to you and Dr. Adams." 2 weeks ago, because I'm updating my PowerPoint presentation, I emailed her, "How are things going?" I sent her a series of questions for our research. The woman is 68 years old. Since that time, now it's 8 months later, she's lost 23 pounds. She is medicine-free. Cholesterol levels, blood pressure. And she says, quote, "I have bowel movements like I'm 22 again." Her words.
Thanks for sharing.
But here's why it works. Here's why it works. Hey, haven't always. To me, I tell you, being constipated is next to death.
That's true.
It's awful. So what it contains, you're tasting within it, is a mucilaginous material. They're called pectin. So that slimy stuff that people all hate, that's what you really should have. In a cup, you're having 14 grams of fiber. What this mucilaginous material does is in your gut, again, we only have this mucus material in our gut, in our intestines, in our nose. And that's designed to protect us. It's called Perry's patch. Anybody know? Perry's patch. It looks like a little cable, a bicycle chain. And that's what kicks off your immune system. When you have food, we all have microbes in food, and your gut reacts to that and turns on your immune system. When we have flavonoids, when we have antioxidant food, it turns on your immune system because that Perry's patch says, "Yeah, come on in. Come on, everything else, out of here." It blocks your sugar intake because that pectin forms a film over the Perry's patch, blocks the sugar intake, and it is released through your body. And then your blood pressure, blood, osteoporosis, everything that your bones. We have people that come back to us and say, "Man, I feel great." My mother is 100 years old in 8 months. She taught me this. She was my first teacher. It works. We've seen people work. Dr. Adams is a very kind and generous man. We wrote a paper, and he gave me co-authorship for the work. And on top of that, he invited me to a conference in France. So we're going to present in Paris, Nice, and Lyon in May, late May and June. Because for 47 years, this plant has been studied. Last week, I read from Korea, a doctor who cured his patients of polyps without surgery. Sorry, Dr. If you on Amazon, if you type in Opuntia, you get 30,000 products, over 30,000 products. This is one of them. This is dehydrated Opuntia. This is exactly the product that the doctor used in Korea. There you go. Okay. This bottle was full last year when I discovered it. This is Opuntia Spirits. This is made from the nopal and made in Ventura County in Mexico. I spent a month this summer and they have many things that are very similar. Opuntia Spirits. It is not cheap. But remember, this was all for research. That's what I told my wife.
How was it?
They have capsules that you can buy. Remember the Opuntia species, there's over 300 of them. There's over 300 all over the world. So that guy who I was talking about, cabeza de vaca, head of the cow, he walked for 8 years. He got to what is now southern Arizona. He speaks the languages. They tell him anything he says. Are there any Spanish forts around? Like, oh yeah. He didn't tell him, go south. They get to the upper Sonoran Desert. Remember, these guys they look like Indians. They show up, talk to the comandante. Nah, you're not out of it. He died 8 years ago, man. He died 8 years ago. All you guys died. Who are you? Liars. He finally convinced them because he had enough information about who he was that convinced the comandante. He started writing his journal at this point, his story of his travels and experiences. Again, he credits his salvation of him and his men to the Nopal and to how the different tribes used it. Talk about burns and skin conditions. Helen mentioned about boiling. Don't ever boil a medicinal plant except yerba santa, because when you boil it, guess what? You kill it. Do not buy this. My wife, one of her colleagues invited us to a very beautiful home in Malibu, and she knows what I do, and she decided to serve this. And Reed, I got this for you. I said, thank you. And my mother taught me to be a polite guest, and I shut up and I ate it. But this will kill everything. It's very easy. You just saw me how I made it. It's very simple. So Dr. Alex Krieger wrote the story about Niños Cabeza de Vaca and how he survived and what his trip was. What was his trip? There are movies on it. There's YouTube videos on it. There's, as I said, dissertations. It's a famous Southwest story that never is taught. When he went back to Spain, King Juan Carlos I. Remember, he's now the grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella. He shows up, and the king wants to talk to him. Problem was, the king didn't speak Spanish because he's Dutch and German. You know, those royalty people that intermarry. And he said, let me see your book. Talked about the book. What he didn't know was that the king was covered up because he suffered from diabetes. In my research, I found a death mask of the king. He has ulcers, diabetic ulcers all over his body. And in the book, he talks about how he was able to help him, but he was too far gone. He was too far gone, like my father, my God rest his soul. But it's an amazing story. And again, the Opuntia. At that point, what does the king order? When he sees that it helps him, he ordered that the Opuntia species be moved to all Spanish holdings all over the world. So as a result, it grows now. Mexico's #1 producer. Italy is #2. South Africa is #3. And it's growing here in the United States. Now you have established Opuntia farms. If you go to Mexico City and you go 40 miles, and you go out to the pyramids, like Teotihuacan, all you see is Opuntia farms, as far as your eye can see. So it's important to understand the historical, the cultural, and medicinal. In Mexico, when you walk into a market, it's not like Vallarta. They actually speak English in Mexico. And you see in every market a man or a woman, and they have a nice little stand. It says, lower your cholesterol, lower your blood sugar, lose weight, remove any, eliminate any kind of gastrointestinal issues. Okay? So, because it does work, even though there's lots of different products. And again, why? Because of the amino acids. Yeah, I'll skip that. Oh, here it is. When Pellegrino gets involved, you know there's something there. It's not in season. All of you know that, or may not know, that the Opuntia produces a fruit. It's called a tuna, all right, prickly pear cactus fruit. Vons makes this sorbet that's amazing. And that is almost as comparable to the juice of this one. to the nopal. But that is also considered a superfood as well, the fruit itself. So again, it's important to understand, like Helen said, is let food be your medicine, let medicine be your food. Because you can take an opiate or you can take an aspirin. Aspirin and ibuprofen are considered black. You guys don't know this, but they come to the pharmacies with a black box warning, meaning that an overdose of ibuprofen or Tylenol can cause a stroke. There's 65,000 people a year die from strokes that are attributed to NSAIDs. Okay? So, again, it's not me. The research is there. What's your name? I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Richard.
Richard, when you went out and for some privacy, did you spray?
Yeah. The spray's in there.
Oh no, I don't care about spray. I got lots. How do you feel now?
Good. Yeah.
Because you look more relaxed now.
I guess so.
Do you mind sharing?
Well,
You don't have to. It's okay.
Well, some people know that I have lupus, which causes a lot of inflammation in my body. My hands, while they don't hurt, they're all, and feet, you know, the joints tend to be a little achy all the time. So there's always inflammation. And Enrique sprayed.
So what did you say? I'm sorry, what interrupt you. What did you say beforehand? That you told me that your doctor is giving you gel and nothing works?
Yes, I went to my doctor to ask if the CBD oil would help. He says, oh no, I'll give you a topical gel. And I put the topical gel on. For 20 minutes it felt fine. And then it didn't. And I'm thinking, I can't put this on constantly all day long. I go through a tube a day. So Enrique said, try this. And it was instantaneous. It shocked the shit out of me. It was instantaneous. It still doesn't hurt. And I am gonna make it and spray it on my feet and my hands. It's just, I don't know what else to say. It's wonderful.
I deal with a lot of people in pain. And when I sprayed it, and if you don't mind me sharing, she welled up. Because pain is an awful thing to live with. My knee, my arthritic thumb, it's awful sometimes, especially with the cold weather that sets in, and I use it constantly. It's awful for people, but we've washed ourselves to live with that pain.
It works out arthritis.
That's crazy, man. I want to get back to health. And so again, it works. And when I see people well up, she's not the first. I've had men who are tough macho guys who well up and just say thank you. And just say thank you. What is that? Because I can tell when people are in pain. I can read them easily. And so it's always, and remember, when you come to our class, as healers, as traditional Chumash healers, we don't bill your insurance. We don't want to see you back. What we want is to teach you how to make the medicines yourself and treat yourself. Because remember that indigenous people use these medications and these foods for thousands of years, long before anybody showed up. And they worked. Otherwise, none of us would be here. Because all our ancestors somehow adapted and survived. Adaptation is an amazing thing in human beings and animals.
Well, Dr. Adams go into some of that on March 30th.
So, Chuck asked me, great, thank you, I'll shut up after this. So, this is his book. It's broken into history, culture, okay? The plants, and the science, and why they work. You can buy this the day of the workshop, or you get it online, up to you. That day, we'll sign it for you. And I always tease him. I said, yeah, when you get done with the book, we can sell it on eBay. To go to that workshop, the March 30th workshop, like I said last, and I think I sent you the flyer.
Yeah, we distributed the flyer.
Yeah.
So just in case, his website is Abe Duss Press. Abe Duss is a water bug.com. Go to his website. The first page, you see his schedule for Rangian Park on March 30th. We need the City of Glendale is sponsoring us. That's why it's free. And we'll do a plant walk. We'll talk about everything. We'll explain how to make it. Easy.
But you have to call.
You have to call the city. Yeah. You have to call the City of Glendale to get Parks and Rec. Get a spot. Otherwise, yeah. Oh, I know Enrique. No, I don't.
I'm with the band.
I'm with the band. Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir.
Is it a bay dus or a bay plus?
Dus.
Okay.
A dus press.
Enrique?
Yes.
Do you have the little recipe for the little medicinal
Spray? Lemon spray?
Spray that you...
Yeah, we'll talk after, but it's easy. It's very simple.
You know, and I want to.
Yeah, I want to know
for
how to
that.
make it too.
Drink.
Okay, I'm done. There's a lot more, but I'm done for right now.
Okay, so we talked about ethnobotany and biomimicry, and it was, and what is ethnobotany again? These definitions were a great source. We're talking about food, medicine, and utilitarian. And I wanted to share with you my favorite books in case you want to know more. One is the Kumae, Ethnobotany. I went to hear the man who wrote this book. He spent 7 years of his life living in the tribe. This was out at Santa Ana Botanical Gardens. And this tribe started out in like the southern part of California, and it goes all the way over to Grand Canyon. And it's one of those that straddles the border of the United States and Mexico. It's kind of like the border is what divides the tribe. But the plant uses here are incredible, and it has recipes and gives you ideas of what you might want to look at. This, of course, is a book that Enrique was talking about that Dr. Adams himself wrote. These are...
No, I'm sorry. He wrote it with his teacher.
He wrote it with Cecilia.
He gets mad when I don't say that.
Okay.
Cecilia, I can't say her name.
Cecilia was once the medicine...
In many cultures, you do not say a person's name who's gone on to their next journey, because in some indigenous cultures, the belief is that you're calling the soul back. So I don't need to deal with her. I hear stories about her and I really don't want to deal with her.
But this is a wonderful book too. And then the third one is, if you want to know more about botany, BL
that book is amazing.
BL plants. When my daughter was going to Humboldt University, and I'd go up there, sometimes visiting. I remember one time she was getting her book list, and I'm kind of looking around. It's like, you don't need to be a student to buy books. I can just get it on my own. And this book has been invaluable. And so everything I teach when it comes to plants basically comes from this. And this is a great reference book to have. You're going to be dealing with little kids in a couple weeks. Do you remember when you were a little kid? Did you start asking questions? Why? Until it drove other adults around you crazy. Why do you always keep on asking why, right? And so I want to throw a few things out there. You ever wonder why apples float? Well, it's because they have 25% of their makeup is air, and that is why they float. Did you know that carrots originally were purple? Did you also know that the first diesel ran on peanut oil? And did you know that there are people who collect used oil, cooking oil, and are using that to run their fuel today? So have we not gone full circle here? And did you know, the next time that you cut up a cucumber and note that there's seeds inside, and somebody tells you it's a vegetable, you can tell them it's wrong because it's a fruit. Thank you. And a final one. Did you know if you have a tree at home and you cut a little notch in it, 10 years from now, that notch is not going to get any higher than the original place that you put that notch? Have that for thought. And so I hope that you can come up with questions to challenge the kids and enjoy and embrace the questions that you're going to get from them too. And so that's the end of this talk, and let's go outside. We have